Chairmen, we are now in session. We're all strapped into Grant's Mazda Miata automatic transmission, I might add.
Just a beautiful
on our way
shade
to Tone
of red.
Town. And it's a long route, but we're making it slowly but surely. And today, the conversation topic is one that has been top of mind lately. Just recently, the NAMM show had been completed. This is the, I guess, the first time in some time that it's been held in Anaheim, as kind of trying to get things back to normal, as it once was, with the typical January NAMM shows that would happen at the beginning of each calendar year. And many people were asking us, "Are you guys going to be at NAMM? Can I meet up with you guys? Can I see, Vertex products? Or the Chairmen going to be at NAMM?" And it got me thinking about the reasons with which I don't do NAMM. I know that in the past, let's just get a quick room check here. Have you guys all been to NAMM before, Brian and Grant?
I've exhibited once, and that was the only time I've been. So
okay, you exhibited once.
Yep.
And that was with Mono.
Correct.
Got it. And Brian, you?
The company, not the sickness.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I've exhibited 2 or 3 different years with Jackson Ampworks.
Oh, Jackson.
With them. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Different realm.
Right. Before you were building rigs, you were working for Jackson Audio, and so you had gone to NAMM in support of Jackson.
Yeah.
But then they were Jackson Ampworks.
Yep.
Or
we did guitar amps. Yeah, it was guitar amp time.
Okay. Got it. So you have a sense of sort of what goes on there as far as the trade show. It's in Anaheim. It's adjacent to Disneyland in this big convention center, and it's 4 days, or I don't know if it's still 4 days, but it was 4 days of trade showing.
Yeah.
In any case, the conversation topic of NAMM has come up quite regularly, and I think amongst manufacturers, this is actually sort of an ongoing conversation that I've had with many other people in the business about the viability of NAMM. And so I'm sure that in other places on the internet and YouTube and podcasts, I'm sure that this topic has been approached in some way, and maybe very similarly to the way that I think about NAMM. But nonetheless, I think it's important that if you're listening to this as just a consumer of musical products, to maybe understand about NAMM, and this is not to discourage you to go. In fact, I think NAMM is maybe most set up now for you if you're a consumer of musical products. And if you're a manufacturer, I would say that it is less so set up for you at this point because of the way that people do business now. And I kind of want to discuss sort of the efficacy or the quality of NAMM for the person it is supposed to be designed for. Maybe some of the ways that people could alternatively get maybe a greater amount of benefit as opposed to doing a NAMM show. And maybe we also talk about what NAMM could do to potentially make it better for the people that they purport to serve. That being the manufacturers and the community of people that are creating and building the gear that consumers want. Any things that should be named before we dive into this conversation, Grant or Brian?
What do you mean exactly? Named?
This should be named as far as things that should be for our consideration as listeners from either of you regarding the topic of NAMM. Do you love NAMM? Am I already getting the hairs on your arm to stand up because you are so insulted by just the mere suggestion?
I'm not a hairless guy, so I'd say a couple hairs, standing up. I'll say this as to put my biases out there right at the beginning. I want to love NAMM.
You want to love NAMM.
I think depending what hat I'm wearing, like you were just saying, consumer, business owner, manufacturer, content creator, although I wouldn't give myself that title because I'm that's not me. But there's different perspectives from which I think I can really enjoy NAMM, and other ones that I just cannot justify it. And so I know we'll get into that further, but yeah, there's aspects to NAMM that I really do enjoy, and other aspects, especially me being a very introverted person, that I absolutely do not enjoy. And so yeah, we'll chat about that, but I'll stop my rambling. Brian, what do you think?
I mean, there are things that I do love about NAMM. I mean, it's been a while since I've been there, but our manager had just went, so he had told us some things that they had changed, which was good. Some things needed to change, but NAMM is just such like such an experience, just all the different stuff to do and kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. I want to love it, but there also are some downsides to it all, just because there's some stuff that is very difficult and long day, long hours for all those vendors and everything. And nowadays, the type of stuff that you find, at NAMM, you find within seconds on social media sometimes. So there's definitely, some reasons why, it could be updated, because, it's been, I don't know how long NAMM's been around. But from what I have been told, it's like, oh yeah, NAMM was created so people could go and find out the new products, and then 2 weeks later have them in their store or whatever, and then people will be like, oh my gosh, that's there. So I mean, there's some updates that could be said.
Yeah. So I think it's worth, just if you're listening to this and you're wondering what NAMM stands for, I think, what does the acronym actually mean? I forget. It's like
I knew this at one point.
something musical manufacturer. National Association of Music Merchants. National Association of Music Merchants. So in other words, it's sort of a consortium, almost like a paid membership that you pay a yearly due for, and you are part of the NAMM community. And ordinarily, twice a year, they would hold a convention with which, as a member, you can pay an additional amount to be able to have a space in the convention center to demonstrate and to show your products to presumably other people in the trade. This is why it's dubbed a trade show. Now, I think one thing to maybe name for the people that are not in the manufacturing side and are just sort of wondering about costs, because I think as a manufacturer, whether we're talking about a marketing endeavor, which this is sort of an extension of, or just doing old school trade show, I think there always has to be a concern about sort of the cost benefit, or what's the likelihood of a return on investment, and will you make that money back plus some in order to justify not only the time that's lost and the opportunity cost of being away from your job for a week. So, in other words, unless you have other people that are staying behind that are going to continue to create the widget, you are going to not be able to produce anything in the time that you're gone. Most companies that are small are not able to do that. They take their staff with them because they can't continue to not staff the NAMM booth and also have people back at their headquarters continuing to build stuff. But the other consideration is, again, is it going to actually, materialize into business that you couldn't have got another way? To give you a sense based on my remembrance, and this rate could have changed, I would imagine if anything, it's gone up. The last time that I had done NAMM, which was a year before the pandemic, so that would have been 2019, I believe a 10 by 10 booth was
10 feet, by the way. We're not talking meters here.
Yeah, so it's 10 feet deep by 10 feet wide.
I think that's the space I'm in right now. I'm pretty sure I'm in a 10 by 10.
Yeah, it's quite small. And the 10 by 10 booth, as I remember, was around maybe $5,000 or $6,000
US.
And then if you needed electricity for the booth, then that was another, I think, $500 a day. So right now, so you're at $5,000. You're at $5,000, and then you have, the electricity times 4 days. So that's 5 times 4. So that's another $2,000. And then if you wanted to have your booth cleaned by the cleaning crew that comes through, that was another $100 a day. So that's another $400.
Don't forget, you have to pay for was it like union people or something? You had to pay for them to unload. We had to pay to have other people unload our crates while the 6 of us literally just stood there and watched them take stuff out of our crate.
Yeah, so the convention center is a unionized shop. And so if you have a booth that requires any assembly, so basically anything short of just a fabric banner that maybe attaches with some aluminum piping or some aluminum fittings that kind of just snap together, you're required to use the unionized crew to assemble and disassemble your booth. And they charge, a standardized rate, like an hourly, to do the booth. And depending on, the quality and skill of the assembly men and women, that can be an expensive endeavor. But I would say, in general, it was around $1,000. It was maybe 500 each way. So you got $1,000 there. If you want internet or need internet, that is another charge. I never needed it, so I never got it. But again, this is just all predicated on a 10 by 10 booth. Now, I lived in California, so my travel expenses were not high. If I live somewhere else, let's just say like in Texas, like Jackson Audio,
Sydney, Australia,
or Australia or wherever, you're paying, I would imagine, somewhere between, I don't know, $600 to $800 a person round trip, if we were going to kind of average it out, plus a week's loss of work. I mean, not plus even considering the travel expenses at this point, you're looking at about $8,400, not even including travel expenses, just to show at the NAMM show. Then you have to get accommodations for you and your team for not just the 4 days of NAMM, but at least a day or two prior, and maybe even a day after, because you have like an unloading day or a breaking down day that occurs the Monday after the final Sunday of NAMM. So I would say $8,400 is just the bare minimum cost for the basic 10 by 10 booth. You then factor in hotels, travel. For most people, food, I would say you're at least looking at $20,000, at least. To give you a sense of how much a high quality YouTube video would cost if you didn't have any sort of production in-house and you had to hire videographers and editors in a studio, you probably would spend less than $5,000 for that. Maybe even, if you could get a good deal, maybe between $2,500 and $5,000. So with the metric of $20,000 as sort of the cost to go to NAMM, you could make several amazing videos of your products with great players, highly produced, that not only could you use as an initial marketing opportunity, but you could chop up and make it into Instagram shorts, YouTube shorts, all these different ways to reach an audience that would cost way less money than NAMM.
Way less.
So I think, first of all, let's just discuss this. I think that I'm going to say that given, and we'll get to dive into this more in the podcast, given the expense at just its minimum is around $8,500 just to be at NAMM, not including getting there or staying there. That's already prohibitive for most small manufacturers. Now, some of the big guys use a bunch of different, have huge booths, 20 by 20, 30 by 30, 50 by 50, whatever it is.
They're insane.
Yeah, then there's some big ones that are there and they're paying a lot of money for it. But I want to know what you guys think about this as people who are either fellow manufacturers, in the case of Grant, or people that are, like Brian, that are rig builders that maybe would consider going there if they maybe in the future want to show off the rig building services. That figure, how does that hit you? I want to know what you think. But first, I want to hear from Grant about some of our amazing sponsors that make the podcast possible.
I thought you'd never ask, Mason. So I'm going to tell you about two of our sponsors today. The first one is Guitar Sanctuary. I know you guys, if you've listened to the podcast before in the last little while, you've heard us talk about Guitar Sanctuary. Amazing place to get the majority of the gear that we talk about on this podcast and show. You can get at the Guitar Sanctuary. There are real live people there, brick and mortar store that you can actually chat to, get opinions, advice, and none other than Brian Omilion himself. He has Omilion reasons to be there because of all the great gear, and you can buy that great gear, get him to set it up for you. He does obviously Omilion audio as well out of the Guitar Sanctuary, and so you can get your rig beautifully done. If you're watching on YouTube, you can actually see in the background, there's probably about 5 or 6 boards going on right now in the background here at Omilion's workshop. So check out the Guitar Sanctuary. If you need any guitar gear that we mentioned on this show or anything else, that is the place to go. And I believe, Brian, correct me if it's wrong, theguitarsanctuary.com, correct?
Yes, sir. Yep.
That's the one. So Guitar Sanctuary, that's number one that I was happy to tell you guys about. Number two, and certainly not the least of the sponsors today, is monocreators.com. Mono, I am the most familiar with their pedal boards. My biggest pro to these pedal boards, lightweight, and you can fit a whole bunch of stuff underneath the angled style board that they do. They also do flat series. They do dual gig bags for your guitars, beautiful soft bags that actually protect the instrument, which I know Mason is a big fan of, and then Brian, huge fan of their backpacks, all the different types of backpacks that they do. Probably in my experience, I've had one of their backpacks, one of the most rugged backpacks I've had, and they just do a great job of protecting camera gear, whether you want to bring cables and lenses or, extra guitar pedals or whatever you need. The Mono stuff is incredible. So monocreators.com, check them out. If you use the code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, you can get 10% off your order at monocreators.com. Those are my two sponsors. You guys feeling good about those? I mean,
oh yeah,
feeling good.
I think that was great. Yeah. So back to the podcast. So what was
expenses?
Your question again?
So expenses. We said it roughly $8,400 is what is a rough calculation of what it costs to just be in the show. This excludes travel to the show. This includes accommodation and food while at the show for you as an individual or you and your team. As somebody who is a fellow manufacturer.
Yeah, that hits me pretty hard, especially because I know, one, from exhibiting and having to pay the cost out of pocket, it's never that that amount of money. Like just food in itself, like everything, you kind of have to be in that area. You aren't doing groceries. You're basically eating out every day. You have to pay for all of the booth, the design of your booth as well, which is a big expense. Luckily for us, when we did it, we partnered with Mono Creators. We were helping them launch their new pedal boards. This was 2018. And so they covered a lot of our booth expenses, which was huge for us. But we still had to pay international flights from Sydney, Australia. And so I think our expenses probably would have totaled out around $6,000 or $7,000, and we mainly had to pay for flights and food. That was our biggest two expenses, and a rental car, something like that.
And so they slept in their NAMM booth.
Exactly. And so we weren't even, I think we stayed at a friend's house, so we didn't even have to do accommodation. It was still $6,000 or $7,000. So to think about the actual expense, if you have to pay for everything, 20 is, I think, being very generous for NAMM. And so for me as a manufacturer, thinking about the deals I need to make at NAMM to make up that cost, I know for a fact when we were there, as a very small company, and we still are, there's no way, like no chance that we would have made an additional $20,000 in profit to cover that expense because of our attendance at NAMM. And other companies, obviously bigger ones, they would be doing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of deals if you're a Fender or you're a Marshall, but we are not. And so as a small company, I just cannot justify an extra $20,000. Like you were saying, I could do YouTube. I I could send literally like 50 of our products out to YouTube content creators, and I could get them to do the videos for me and get way more exposure than I could with all the effort and time it takes to go to NAMM. So I, as a manufacturer wearing that hat, I personally cannot justify it. I'm obviously just one person. Other companies may very well be able to justify it. But I cannot. There's no way.
Yeah. So
Right.
I will like. So with I don't know what it cost when we went as Jackson. I had an idea of what it cost from some of the numbers I heard. I think a lot of the NAMM pricing is just based off of what it used to be. Back in the day, like hearing it from my manager. Yeah, well, back in the day, you would go, like I said it earlier, you would go there and that's where you would learn everything about all of these products, and you would take pictures or you would write down paper of stuff that you wanted. That's where you would order 20 of those Gibson Les Pauls or whatever the guitar or new hot guitar was or whatever it was. And that's where you order it, and you got it in 2 weeks, and then you hey, we have them, and you sold them all within a day or something. And it was such a big thing. But like nowadays, like before you even go to NAMM, people, companies are posting about their new products, or like I think it was the Quad Cortex. Was it last year it came out or something? I can't remember. Someone posted about it even before NAMM, and it's like, oh, that's cool. And then there was video stuff, and then later on, I got a text message from a friend. Oh, look at this thing. I'm like, yeah, I already know about it. It's just because. Yeah, social media is such a thing. But yeah, I mean, it's, I think a lot of the pricing, if it was more affordable, you could see more companies coming and doing it. But yeah, for $20,000, I mean, it's like going on a family trip for me and my wife and my 2 kids. It's like $1,800. I can't even imagine what it would be for 10 employees from a business to go. And then that business to have to pay for all of their food, because first of all, you end up eating out of food trucks the entire week or those little pop-up stands, and then you just feel like garbage after because of all the fried food that you eat constantly. I feel garbage after eating one fried chicken sandwich, so I can't let alone a week of it. And it's so expensive, it's like getting a tiny like hot dog for $19, and you're just like, that was a good one bite, like kind of stuff. So it's just like realistically just so much of it that like if I was going by myself, yeah, I could do it, and I could walk around and for 3 days. I think it's 3 days now. But I just think realistically there's so much more that companies are doing, and there's a lot of companies that aren't going because they've all figured out, oh yeah, I can just post it on social media and get way more exposure. I'm still going to get more, I'm going to still get the same amount of orders if I just send it to all my dealers than it is if I was to go to NAMM and send it to my dealers. I just save all that money. If you're a little company starting out like my friend's company, that they are a new small company, they are inside someone else's booth, same kind of concept with Grant, like they're starting off small, but they're trying to get as much exposure, that is a handy tool. But if you're a big company, sometimes you don't need to go, and sometimes it's just too freaking expensive.
The other thing I think is good to bring up as well, if you've never experienced NAMM, this isn't something I had thought about before I went, was if depending on which area of the venue you're in, let's say you're doing guitar pedals or you're in the amp section, or heaven forbid near the drums, the after everything we've talked about, the amount of money you spend, the planning, the prep, the travel, the booth design, all that, you show up in your 10x10 booth, the smallest possible booth you can get. Big investment as a little company. You're really excited to sell more products, get more exposure. You show up, the event starts, and you can barely hear yourself think. It is so loud in there because everyone's trying to demo. There's sound police trying to keep the levels down, but inevitably they just creep up because everyone's trying to be heard. And you put all this effort in, and you can't even show off your gear because you can't hear yourself talk. And I just think they've packed so much into this venue, as they would need to. I understand that, but it's not a demo friendly environment for what it has now become. I can't speak of what it was, before I went or even after. I've only been the one time. But yeah, I think there are some difficulties in that avenue as well. And I was lucky enough when we were in the mono booth, it was in a quiet section by some other bigger companies, so it wasn't fighting for sound. But when we were walking around, it was like I was over it in 5 minutes. It was too loud. So I think that's another thing to consider as well.
Yeah, I mean, like the last year that I went, I started seeing more headphone options, people using headphones, which is great. You know, the last year that I think it was Nashville was the last year that I went. The last like NAMM I went to, and we had just come out with like it was called the Bakersfield with Jackson. So it was like 100-watt, big, with this beautiful 212, but we could barely crank it. Yeah. And if the tone police come by and you're too loud and you get too many times, like I've seen that they shut people down. It's like, sorry, you can't, you're done. And you're like, what? And like that, like you get screwed. But that last year we were right next to the drum area, next to this company that had all these different hi-hats. So all you hear all day, you're talking so loud and you're screaming at these people, and you're just like every muscle in your face is like bulging because you can't hear each other talk, and then you sound like a Muppet because you've talked so much that you lost your voice. But yeah, I think one year we went and someone that we're paying for this, like this is what we're paying for, and it's just like it just becomes such a overwhelming experience. Sometimes good, but very overwhelming.
Well, it sounds like, to summarize, that there are definitely some serious drawbacks in terms of the expense for an ordinary manufacturer. And one thing that I think that this leads into, as far as the conversation is concerned, is how do people actually do business now? And how is NAMM sort of divorced from that? Because the way that I view NAMM is it is sort of riding the inertia from the 1980s. As Brian said, this used to be the way that everybody had to do business because there wasn't an option other than advertising in a magazine to really let people know that your products exist. And from a dealership perspective, unless you're sending out samples to the dealers in the country with which you're aware of, and the awareness of dealers was also much more diminished at that time because there wasn't an internet to sort of look up who the hot dealers were, or to see which dealers were offering all these extra sort of incentives to the people with which they carried by creating content and posting cool photos and stuff like that. There was no Instagram, there was no internet, there was no way to kind of see what the dealer was going to bring to the table. The easiest way to do that as a company was to have a trade show where everybody converged on Anaheim, or in the old days it used to be in LA. I think it used to be at the Forum or at like, or maybe it was some convention center in LA, like downtown LA. And in any case, that used to be where people were able to touch the product, see the product, as Brian said, photograph the product, get excited about the product, and put in their yearly or half-yearly orders until the next NAMM show in 6 months. And this is the way that they were able to engage with the product, learn about the product. There were much fewer people in the NAMM shows during that time because it was truly a trade show. This was a place where people came with the explicit intent to do business. And when they came to your booth, there was decision makers that represented brands or companies that were engaging with the owners of the companies that were demonstrating or showing at the NAMM show. Now, it is less of a trade show, and it is really a guitar show. And my reasoning behind saying that it is no longer a trade show is there are very few people at the NAMM show that are empowered in any capacity to make decisions on behalf of a business to buy products from you. Most of the people that will come to your booth are fans are people that want to be industry insiders and they got a pass from some other brand and they're coming there because they want to check out all the new stuff. I would say less than 5% of the people that will come to your booth over the course of a NAMM show are actually people that could do business with you. And the reason that has happened is that the way that NAMM, in my opinion, has been able to say that they are serving the musical community is by showing big attendance numbers, and that somehow that is equal to offering a quality service to the industry. And so they'll say, we had record-breaking attendance on Saturday and Sunday, 50,000 people in attendance. And they have these numbers because they are diluting the quality for entry into the NAMM show, where it isn't just about trade. It is a guitar show. Because again, people are there for the enjoyment of the products. They're not there to do business and commerce. And I say this and this is an example of that, is that the last time that I went to NAMM, I think I had a mixture of full-time and part-time people coming. And I think we had 12 people. You know, when you fill out your NAMM information, you say how many people are coming as a representative of your company. And then in turn, that correlates to a certain number of passes. And I believe it was like 50 passes on 12 people. So the intent of that, in my thinking at least, is that the expectation is that you would give out all these passes to people that are sort of in the periphery of your company that may want to go to the NAMM show, but are not actually involved in your company in any way. If you multiply that across the thousands of brands that are there, and that sort of, you know, difference is sort of calculated based on, you know, all these different companies. A Dunlop maybe gets hundreds of passes because they're bringing, you know, 20, 30 people and they have a 50 by 50 booth. You're ending up with thousands and thousands of people that are divorced from the companies that are showing, but are fans of the company, fans of trade shows, want to be, again, industry insiders, and they are just there as warm bodies that up the attendance numbers, but dilute the quality of the people that are there. So if you are a manufacturer and you are trying to talk to people that are coming to your booth, thinking that they are going to be helping and promoting your business and helping you sell product, most of the people that are there are not there for that reason. And that's fine, but that is disingenuous of NAMM to call this a trade show when it really is no longer a trade show. This is not how people do business in 2023. And it's not how people did business even 10 or 15 years ago. But this is why I say that NAMM is riding the inertia from the 1980s when this was the way that business was done, but they refused to evolve the way that they are doing the trade show to actually make it serve the people with which are paying them every year. So it has become more about, I think, the social aspect, which I think is probably arguably the best component of NAMM, is you're getting to see people that maybe you only see once or twice a year. You're getting to connect with friends. You're getting to hang out. But if you're a manufacturer, you can't do any of that. You're sort of anchored to your booth. You're sort of thinking that like maybe I'm going to land some new dealers. But I mean, again, just thinking on this $20,000 metric, if I'm being generous, and this is definitely not the truth for most pedal companies, if you're selling a boutique pedal at $20 or at $200 retail, your profit on every sale, like the amount of money that you make, if you're selling to a dealer, is $50 or less, typically, once you've considered your expenses, marketing, all that stuff. So at $50, if you have to make 20 grand, and again, we're saying 20 grand conservatively, you have to sell over, was it 400 pedals? You just sell over 400 pedals at the NAMM show in order to just break even. That's a lot of pedals to sell, especially for a small company. Like the gentleman you built that board for, Shane at, was it Wonderlust Audio?
Westerland Audio.
Westerland, sorry. Westerland Audio. makes like a Dumble style pedal, has one pedal, he'd have to sell over 400 pedals in order to break even. That would be insane. That would be insane for a company that has one pedal that has just come out to make anywhere near that amount of sales.
And I don't think you can purchase at NAMM, right? Can you buy
cannot
stuff
purchase
in
at NAMM.
Okay.
No, you're not allowed to sell anything at NAMM. And so this is like another thing where it's like we're pretending that we're a trade show in this way and that it is about the trade, but we're actually a guitar show in reality, and nobody can sell anything at the NAMM show. And so it ends up making it really difficult for anybody to recoup their money. And I think that this is really a call to action, I think, for NAMM, that's like evolve or dissolve. Like, I think that one company that has done a great job with this in sort of evolving based on the way that things look now is Sweetwater. And they have their gear exchange, which I'm going to talk about here in a moment. But I want to first mention that Sweetwater does have something cool called Gear Fest, separately from Gear Exchange, which is sort of like their version of a NAMM. And they invite in all these influencers. They don't charge anything for their booths. People can come there and they can create booths, and you have to like reserve your booth as a manufacturer. But basically, as a manufacturer, you're there for free. You can show off your stuff, and there's all these influencers that they bring there to start to create and promote stuff about your product. And I think that this is a much smarter way that NAMM certainly could start to explore, to be able to offer some incentives based on the way that people consume gear. If you have somebody like a Rhett Shull coming to your booth, talking about your gear, posting that online, that is going to way far supersede any of the attention that you would get in an NAMM show, because you're getting a vetted guitar audience through a vetted influencer that is always talking about guitar gear. They come to your booth, they interview you, they talk about your stuff, they show your stuff. This is going to have way more reach than NAMM could ever have for you, with an audience that's actually targeted for your stuff. But before we continue further with that, I want to talk about three sponsors that make this podcast possible every single week. The first is our friends over at the Sweetwater Gear Exchange. Now, if you haven't heard of Sweetwater, first of all, where have you been this whole time? Sweetwater is one of the foremost places to get gear online, and they actually have a great retail shop as well in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And the Gear Exchange is a really cool thing where it sort of combines the best aspects of like an eBay and a Craigslist and a Reverb.com into a great site where you can buy and sell used gear. And the coolest thing about their site is that if you are a seller and you make a great sale, you make a great killing on this sale, you get top dollar for it, you can keep all of your earnings by simply putting your earnings onto a Sweetwater gift card instead of just taking the cash. And this is a really great thing if you're somebody like me that kind of keeps a fund for gear, that this is kind of a revolving door. It allows me to make sure that I'm keeping the maximum amount of profit, and I'm reusing it on stuff that I would be buying anyway from Sweetwater, so that I can retain 100% of my earnings having that on a Sweetwater gift card. It is a very, very cool policy that they have in that regard. And of course, it has all the safety and security that you would expect from a great company like Sweetwater. I've had nothing but great experiences buying and selling on the Gear Exchange. I highly recommend you check it out. Sweetwater.com/used. You can start an account for free, get buying and get selling now. Secondly, I want to talk about our friends over at Stringjoy. Now, if you're a string destroyer like me, you go through strings relatively quickly. I'm with no joke, I can rarely get more than a gig, like a 3-hour gig out of a set of strings. I absolutely destroy them. And I've normally had to resort to using exclusively coated strings as a consequence of that. And I've always struggled with coated strings because I feel like they always sound a little bit dead no matter what I do. But I finally have found an uncoated string that allows me to actually have the longevity of a coated string and have the tone of an uncoated string, which is from our friends over at Stringjoy. And they are offering a special code for Chairman of the Board's listeners. Using the code BOARDS, BOARDS, get 10% off your string order from Stringjoy. Head over to stringjoy.com and enter that coupon code, get 10% off anything that you want. And lastly, I'm going to talk about our friends over at Bestronix. Now, as we've said, whether you just need to phone a friend, you just need to talk gear, you need to talk pedal boards, Our friend Brad over at Bestronix is the best guy for that. Not only is he going to give you a great deal on your cables, your plugs, any of the accessories that you need to build a pedalboard, but he's just an all-around good guy, just a salt-of-the-earth Midwesterner from Chicago, Illinois. And if you need anything, and I mean anything, from square plugs to Mogami cable to the house brand that they make at Bestronix, which is also excellent, Brad's got everything you need. And you can get 10% off your entire order from Bestronix by using the coupon code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS. Get 10% off anything. Head over to btpa.com. Use DACHAIRS. Get 10% off, and you can find literally anything that you need to build a pedalboard. And plus, you'll make a new friend in Brad. Great guy. Great place. We love them all over here at the Chairman of the Boards. Let's get back to NAMM. So, based on what I said, that NAMM needs to evolve, what are ways in which you think that NAMM could better serve musical manufacturers, given the way that things have evolved in sort of NAMM's resistance to evolving with the way that people do business now in 2023? Do you have any ideas for how you think that maybe NAMM could improve their product so that it actually is meeting people where they are, meeting manufacturers where they are, and turn it into an actual trade show again instead of just a guitar show?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long NAMM has been running for. Obviously, it's been a while. But it does, as you kind of alluded to earlier, it does feel like a show that was created pre-internet, communicating quickly online, and to have to be anywhere these days, if the barrier to entry is I have to be there physically, I feel like to some degree you're leaving people behind, and so I think there needs to be some component of, if I can't be there physically, how can I still be involved as a manufacturer? And I think the other thing that they really need to consider is the other barrier to entry, which is just cost. Like to charge, the fact that you said they charge $100 for someone to do a 2-minute vacuum job in a 10x10 booth, that is cost prohibitive. Like, it's just ridiculous. And so I think thinking through the cost thing, whether that's, I'm thinking off the top of my head, but if they were to put their money where their mouth was, they would take, instead of charging this massive amount just to show up, they would take 15% of all the sales you generate at NAMM goes back to NAMM. If I can't sell anything, NAMM and myself won't benefit. But if I can sell something, if the show works, everyone benefits. And again, there's a whole bunch of holes you could poke in that, and I understand that. But put your money where your mouth is. If the show works, then let's figure out a way for everyone to win because of it. If it doesn't work, then let's change. And so I don't know how they would do that practically. I mean, obviously they have big costs with a venue that size that they would have to cover. But I think the way they're doing it now, I think, and this is shown by the companies that are not showing up, I think they're dying a slow death, and they need to change pretty quickly if they want to salvage this show. And I think that would be, again, I think that would be beneficial for everyone. I want to love NAMM, and I think as a content creator, as a manufacturer, if I can just go to attend and I can just walk around and schmooze a little bit, still make some appointments, that's beneficial for me. I think that would almost be worth the travel cost just to go and be able to, hang out, be in people's faces a little bit.
You're
make
a NAMM
some
scalper.
Exactly. But that's, for a small company, spending $5,000 is way more doable than $25,000. And I could just go by myself. I don't have to bring 5 employees. I could, but I don't have to if I just want to show up and walk the grounds and still make appointments. So I think they just have to figure out a way for the average company, which these days, in the world that we're in, the average pedal making company is one guy in his garage. That's the majority of the industry, and that guy cannot show up to NAMM. It's just not even possible. Can't even consider it. Unless they're independently wealthy from another source of income. So I think they have to recognize the fact that the industry has drastically shifted to, single to maybe 1 to 3 employees for a business, and that business doesn't have the profit margin to drop that kind of cash, let alone make it back once they show up.
Yeah. I mean, never physically having to pay to go to NAMM or anything. I don't have, I can't say, oh, this is what what I would do or anything, because I've only been sent to go. But, realistically, like, I don't know. I could see them upgrading some things. Like I heard, so like NAMM it was 3 days. It was the 13th, 14th, and 15th for this past one. So it was only 3 days, but like on the 15th, it was a public day, not a public day, a public day. So you could buy a ticket like from a general public admission and go. I could see something like, the first 2 days being more exclusive for dealers and for music artists, because when I went, I met a lot of like musicians that toured a lot. That was their full-time job. I remember we met Zane Carney when he was currently on tour with John Mayer at the time, and like meeting those people were really cool, but like they were so like hat and sunglasses just weaving around through people just because they wanted to go experience all this cool new gear and stuff, but they didn't want to be bombarded constantly by all these people stuff. Like, you go for 8 hours, but 6 of the hours you're just talking to people, trying to get to different areas. I mean, I could see them doing something where like the first couple of days are like exclusively dealers and like professional artists, so they can actually see gear, and then maybe on the third day change it to where you could open publicly sell to people, like, buy, oh, I really love this new pedal, yeah, I'll take it or whatever, and they walk away. Because one, it will help that company have less stuff to load up and ship back and that kind of stuff, which would be nice. But I could see maybe even a more affordable option. And I'm not, I don't want to be negative, because NAMM is a cool experience and it's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. It's a whole thing of the after NAMM kind of stuff, seeing those concerts. Like my friends, they are exhibiting at a booth, but then after the show, they have like 2 or 3 gigs they're playing that night. So like, it's that experience in the nightlife or whatever after NAMM, to get to go and hang out with your friends that you've never seen, or us all three to get together finally and be in person, because we've never like physically have met each other, which is funny.
Yeah,
like,
that's weird.
There's people. This is so weird. It's like there's people on social media. I'll be talking like, oh yeah, I'm talking to my friend this, and my wife's like, have you ever met them? And I'm like, no. So like, it's a cool experience. There's Chairman number 4. So it's it's a cool experience to be able to go and meet new people. Hey, buddy. So it's a cool experience to be able to go and like meet people and stuff. But I do think if they kind of cater towards, even giving a better pricing on new, like smaller businesses, like not expecting that small business to pay $8,000 for that booth, put them in a different hall with other small businesses. Like, you don't have to be right next
like
to
an
Gibson.
up-and-comers thing or something.
Yeah, like even if it's just like, Hall D is, big staple companies, Gibson, Mesa, whoever these, I don't know who was there, but then like you have like a small business.
None of those companies.
See, I don't know who's
Fender
there.
wasn't there.
Orange,
PRS wasn't there. JHS isn't there.
And that's the thing, is like
Wampler,
PRS,
boutique amps, everybody.
really. So like PRS, I heard wasn't at NAMM, but they held their own NAMM style thing by inviting people from, so like our boss went to the PRS factory, which it didn't cost anything for them for all these people to come out. It costed all these people money to come out and stay in the hotel and fly, and fly there, but they can show off all their new stuff. So that was a really smart thing. But even if they just cater towards like smaller businesses having a small business area, so you could see these smaller 10x10, not smaller, you can't be smaller than 10x10, but like a 10x10 that's more affordable for smaller companies that can get their foot in the door, I think would be really helpful. And, like I said, I'm not going to be negative, because it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was exhausting, but I would go, if I could go walk around and meet and hang out with people, and people that I talk to on social media all the time, but also as a content creator, go and get footage and stuff, which they did a media day for that. But I could see them doing some kind of things that cater to newer companies that want to get into it, but don't want to have that massive price tag.
I think your idea of doing a being able to sell inventory, I think that's awesome for one of the days. And then NAMM could track it and maybe take a percentage. Even if you don't have the physical inventory there, you take the order and, you have all the order numbers, and in 2 weeks, your order will ship, or, the manufacturer's going to know if and when they can ship that product. But even that, it just allows you to very easily track, like on day 3, I made $15,000 in sales that I wouldn't have necessarily been able to make as easily. I can now at least put a metric on this thing to see if it was actually worth it or not.
Exactly.
And I think something like that would be great. They would probably charge you $750 just for the point of sale machine, the credit card reader, whatever it is. But still,
you don't have any internet. You don't have any internet.
Exactly. Exactly.
This is an upcharge for the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that if there were some sort of reciprocal accountability, that where NAMM had a dog in the fight, I think that would make a lot more people feel as though they had a partner in their exhibition, than if it was just like you pay the $8,400, and go with God, like there's nothing that says that it's going to work. And I think that going back to something about people not attending, I think the pandemic was actually, in many ways, I think accelerated maybe people's understanding of this, where I think that the narrative amongst businesses for a long time was, we have to show at NAMM because the optics of not showing look as though there's a problem in the business, and then could signal that, you better be careful about brand X, it's not looking good, we better abandon ship. And I think when people showed at NAMM, or when people didn't show at NAMM because there was no NAMM, or the way that NAMM worked was like digital in the pandemic, and companies were like, well, I'm not doing that. And then they saw that there wasn't any considerable change in them doing their releases digitally and using influencers to create videos or doing their own product videos, etc., that it didn't affect the release in how they would expect those numbers and projections to look, but they just never had the opportunity to actually give it a try because of the fear of the optics of not going to a NAMM show. And so when they did that and they saw, wow, it's not really that different, this now sort of, validated that they didn't need to do NAMM in order to produce the numbers that they wanted. And you can see that most people now in our business are not dictating their release schedules necessarily around the NAMM calendar, where I would say 10 or 15 years ago, almost all the releases tended to happen around NAMM time. And, you saw some people, during the NAMM week, like Universal Audio and stuff like that, schedule their release calendar around that. And they're an old school company that's been around for a long time, UA. So I'm sure that they feel a little more, I don't know, maybe like they needed to align with that in order to, I don't know, get the most bang for their buck out of the release. But I'd say most companies are not doing that. They are releasing when the product is ready, and if they've got a good social media presence, they know that they can push that product out and they can get sales, and that the NAMM show is not going to be a tool that they need in order to have a quality release that's going to get in front of a lot of people. Because if you have a YouTube channel, or you have an Instagram or whatever, you can market this product, and you can market very specifically to guitar players, and you have the ability to do that through targeted ads. When you show up to a NAMM show, as I said, you don't know if somebody who's coming to your booth is a guitar player, is a manufacturer. And I think furthermore, most dealers that are showing up at the NAMM show, there's not a lot of room anymore for dealers just to take on pedal companies, because I think that most of the dealers these days seem to be taking on, a ton of pedal companies, and they're relying on the pedal company to generate the content that they're going to repurpose. So they're sort of piggybacking on whatever the manufacturer's already created. They're not generally creating their own specific content on your specific products, because they represent hundreds of pedal companies in their store, and they just can't afford to do that for all 400 or 500 pedal companies. So they're sort of looking to you to see, what can you create on your own that then we can sort of ride the coattails of? And, showing up at an NAMM show is not going to be enough for them just to say, I'm going to carry your product. I think the only people that maybe works for a little bit are people like Shane, again, at, what was the company called?
Westerland.
Lund. Yeah. Who makes one pedal and nobody has heard of him before. He's already kind of at the floor, so there's not really much lower in terms of brand recognition that you can go than just coming out with a new pedal and it's your first pedal. Maybe you'll gain some dealers and maybe there'll be some benefit there. But I think for most companies, I think NAMM is pretty antiquated, and unless they kind of go a route of like a Sweetwater Gear Fest, I don't see how companies are going to continue to just send money down to them in knowing that it's just, it's just a crapshoot. There's nothing that they're going to get back from that.
Yeah.
I want to break before we wrap up today and have Brian talk to you about some of our other sponsors that make the podcast possible.
For sure. Yeah. I'll make it short and simple. Our first amazing sponsor is Creation Music Company. On a daily, I'm using them. I literally have 4 boxes of Creation literally behind my camera of just road cases and plugs and boards and everything. Great company in Tulsa. They have a Chairmen 15 CHAIRMEN 15 for 15% off. It applies to all their products except their plugs. They're already discounted, and any of their custom cases, or any custom cases, anything customized like that is not applicable. Then our second awesome sponsor and newest sponsor is Neural DSP. If you've seen their plugins and stuff, or if you've seen their Quad Cortex, it's a very amazing new quality equipment, and the plugins have obviously been around for a while. But I have done numerous Neural DSP Quad Cortex setups. I did recently one for Seal a couple months ago that I posted about. And they're just an all-around great company. They have a discount code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, for 30% off. This applies to all of their plugins. It doesn't apply to any newest plugins unless has it been 30 days, Mason? Is it 30 days?
I think.
90 days.
90 days.
90 days. Yeah. So 90 days after, say, a new plugin releases today, you can use the code in 90 days to get it. 30% does not, unfortunately, apply to the Quad Cortex. So I'm sorry if I got your hopes up for that one. But regardless, you should still go buy that unit because it's absolutely amazing.
And I believe that coming soon, you're going to be able to use your the neural amp modeling in the Quad Cortex. I believe that's a piece of software that is in the works. So if you end up buying some of these at a 30% discount, you can eventually be able to add them into the Quad Cortex as additional amp models outside of what the unit is already capable of. So
which is amazing.
Yeah. So that is coming. So I'm excited about that whenever that does happen, because I've messed around with the Corey Wong one, and that's a really great, clean sound, but there's so many amazing ones that Neural does.
Yeah.
They were at NAMM. Just they're the one company that was at NAMM. But I think to maybe wrap up here, final thoughts, considerations. I think that NAMM actually has a lot of opportunities here and is leaving money on the table by not evolving to a style of trade show that would resemble the way that the music industry does business in 2023. Apparently, they've been around since 1901. I just looked it up.
Wow.
And there were 52 charter members. And I don't know where they were holding, those original conventions. Certainly, there was no Disneyland back in 1901. But they've been around for some time, and sometimes that means that it can be slow to turn the ship around. But Grant or Brian, what do you guys think? Final thoughts on NAMM before we conclude today?
I would say I could see them the NAMM, Mr. NAMM, whoever the heck they are, or NAMMs, the peoples. I could see them maybe why that
We're
made me
having dinner
laugh.
with the NAMMs.
Ah,
Very
damn
nice
it.
people.
I used so many jokes, pun jokes, when I worked for Jackson about NAMM. I was like, "Oh, NAMM it" and stuff like that. So stupid. I just remembered that one. But I would say if they could reach out to, if they could reach out to influencer people, and get like, hey, what would be great for this? Like, get some polls on what people want to see at NAMM. I think that would go a long way. I think opening up a day to be able to do where dealers can sell stuff would be also really great. But NAMM, NAMM in general, it's a cool experience if you can go for fun, and hang out with your friends and eat food and walk around and see cool gear and stuff. But I think if they could put out some kind of a poll asking their dealers or their artists stuff that they want to see, it would make a big difference, as well as asking just people in general, what do you want to see at NAMM? Like, creating creating an experience that people don't already know. Oh, I know it's going to be exactly like this. Like, it's not always the same, kind of just changing it up. That's what I would say.
Yeah,
Grant?
I think that makes sense. I think if I'm going to be totally honest, I do feel not being at NAMM this year that I'm like, I have a bit of FOMO. I wish I was there, even if it was just walking around. I do enjoy the concept, the idea of a whole bunch of industry people in one room at the same time. And I think it's good for me as a manufacturer, company owner. I think it's good for me as a musician and someone that uses the gear, just to see like, oh yeah, we're a massive community of people. There is a ton of us that are still into music. We still love guitar, creating all this. I think that side of it is incredible. And the community, the sheer size of NAMM is awesome. So I would love to be there right now, just roaming, not necessarily exhibiting, but just roaming around and being a part of that. So I think they do have, I think there's good bones there. There's good structure to build upon. They just are, to stay with the metaphor, they're getting a bit old and tired and they need to reinvigorate. And I just don't see that. I don't know. I don't see it really happening. Or they, like, as in past tense, I haven't seen that happening, and they need to change. And I do think they need to change pretty quick. So it'll be interesting to see it they come up in the future years. They obviously are not oblivious to that. They know that they need to change as well. And I'm sure that they have a whole bunch of people working on that and ideas. It'll just be I'll be curious to see if it's enough in the span of time where it needs to happen.
Oakley's got things to say.
Yes.
Always.
Yes. Well, I think there definitely is some dry rot to go back to the good bones in the NAMM paradigm. And I really hope that they're able to take stock of what it is that people are actually wanting from NAMM and being able to deliver it. Because I think again, they've sort of lost the plot in terms of it be supposing to be a trade show. And I don't really think that happens the way that it did. And I think that there's still some confusion perhaps around what the outcome of the show really needs to be in order for people to be able to justify that expense. If they want to keep the expense around $20,000, basically, by the time that people come and exhibit and show and set up and tear down all that stuff, then I think that they need to be able to provide $20,000 of benefit. And I think that I think that from an outsider perspective, it is a formula, a kind of a cookie cutter formula that they've tried to basically ride until the mold breaks. And, I have to imagine that based on the metric and the charges, that it is still profitable for them to continue to keep the charade going. And I think that there have probably been years where they've made some really great profits, without having to have any incentive to really deliver for the people that it's supposedly working on behalf of. And I just having seen how Sweetwater does GearFest, it is very manufacturer centric and very attendee centric. They want the attendees to have as much fun and to have value added as the people that are showing there, and they want to honor both people. And I don't feel like NAMM has the same understanding and respect for its membership. And I feel like it is not, from a manufacturer perspective, I feel like it's just it's kind of gotten out of control to the point where everybody is kind of a membership number, and there isn't a lot of personalization beyond that. And just kind of having seen the contrast of what a smaller trade show can do on the Sweetwater side, and the reverence that Sweetwater has for the manufacturers, and really trying to present a really high quality show that's mutually beneficial, I know that it's possible. And I think that you have to really want to create a change if you want to see the improvement. And I don't know that NAMM is there yet. And maybe, over time and dwindling attendance, as we've said, major companies were not there. I mean, whole boutique amp distribution wasn't there. So that includes Wampler, Morgan, Friedman, Synergy, Egnator, like all these kind of bigger boutique brands that are all under one roof. JHS is not there. There's, in terms of the pedal business, a lot of people aren't there. Fender, PRS, Mesa Boogie, Gibson, Marshall. These are huge companies that are not showing up there. This is telling us that this is not the way that people are doing business anymore, and we're seeing that across the board. And so I think when NAMM hits rock bottom, hopefully they still have enough time to pivot to really start making it better. And I'm hopeful that they will. And if they do, I would be willing to go there, not only socially, but as a business and as a manufacturer. So I hope that they make that change. But I don't know if they will. I don't know if there's enough time. But with that said, gentlemen, I appreciate the conversation today. Of course, if you're listening and you have an opinion on NAMM or whether we've got it wrong, please do tell us. And if you're from NAMM and you're listening to this, I would love to see you improve, and I'm happy to give constructive feedback wherever it may fit, as I'm sure Brian and Grant are as well. And until next time, we're going to hop back into the Miata and make our way back onto Tone Town. We're going to strap Oakley to the roll bar and get on going. Until next time, gentlemen.
See you guys.
See ya.
Yeah.